am delighted to be here among friends. Friends who share my special admiration for the state of Israel. And in that regard, I tell people talking to groups like this is, like the ambassador, is kind of a new experience for me. I am coming off a decade where I had the honor and privilege of serving as Prime Minister, something for which I'll be eternally grateful for the people of Canada. But in that capacity, I spent time at many, many meetings around the world, meetings among some of the most powerful people on earth, where my voice in defense of Israel was often a lonely one. And I don't mind saying, I'll repeat this, friends if I may, my voice on this was always very clear and I was very consistent. That is to say, my government's recognition of Israel's right to exist was unconditional, our support of Israel's right to self-defense was unequivocal, and our refusal to single out Israel for criticism and for sanction, and to draw moral equivalence between Israel and its enemies was unwavering. And I want to add this. What I'm most proud of is that I took these positions backed almost unanimously by Cioccolanti and his colleagues. I took this position not just when I was speaking in front of groups like this. Every politician I have found is a friend of Israel when they're speaking to a Jewish or pro-Israeli group. I took these positions when Israel was being most vocally condemned and abandoned by its supposed friends around the world. Now, groups like this often ask me, why did I take these positions? Why? As Cioccolanti said, the short answer is very clear. I did it because it was the right thing to do. But I still get asked the question anyway, why did you take these positions? And I say to people, it's kind of sad that people insist on asking me this question. Because a generation or so ago, no one would have asked a Canadian Prime Minister, a Canadian politician, or frankly a politician from any Western democratic country, why they would support Israel, why they would support Israel's right to exist and right to defend itself. You would have assumed that a politician from a democratic Western country would have that position. You would have been perplexed if that had not been his position or her position. But after more than a generation where in the Western world, media, academics, and international organizations have made attacking Israel something of a cottage industry, the question now, sadly, does have to be asked. My reasons for supporting Israel, I have never framed those reasons, friends, in terms of religious or biblical interpretation. I frame my arguments, as I will tonight, to a much wider audience. I say that my support for Israel did begin with my upbringing. As far back as I can gather from my family tree, my ancestors have always been pro-Jewish. My grandfather, who I did not know, was very pro-Jewish. My father, Joe Harper, who passed away in 2003, was a lifelong admirer of the Jewish people, and because of that, he was a supporter of Israel, and he was a strong and vocal opponent of anti-Semitism, and he was so in an era when the opposite view in Toronto was very common. But my father not only believed that opposing anti-Semitism is morally right, he also believed that opposing anti-Semitism is extremely prudent. His views came in part from having grown up in the 1930s. And he constantly reminded me, from his memories from his childhood, of the widespread excuses that were being made during that decade for Adolf Hitler, especially the excuses made on the intellectual left. And he believed that the lesson of history was clear. Those who, like Hitler, begin by threatening or hating the Jewish people will inevitably hate and threaten all of us. And this goes to the core of the support that I had as Prime Minister and that my government had for Israel. Our view is that the support of the State of Israel is of vital strategic importance, a matter of our own long-term interests. I am referring to the long-term interests of the Dominion of Canada, the United States of America, and of the wider Western world. Israel is part of our wider Western civilization, and it is our only real, unequivocal, enduring ally in that most dangerous part of the world, the Middle East. Israel is the only country there which, like us, has anchored itself in the ideals of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, the things which over time have proven to be the only ground in which human rights, political stability, and economic prosperity, in other words, the only ground in which our way of life can take root and flourish. The wider these values spread, the stronger that they grow, and likewise, when they are threatened anywhere, they tend to be threatened everywhere. Now, friends, what today, internationally, what today threatens those values most? It is those who scorn modernity, those who despise the liberty of others, and those who hold all differences of peoples, cultures, and religions in contempt. Those who, as my father said, often begin by hating Jews, but as history has shown, end up hating all of us. And today, at the top of that list, if you look around the world in terms of those who hate those values and hate the societies that embrace them, at the top of that list is the jihadist movement of radical Islam, a force which has threatened the state of Israel every single day of its 70-year existence, and a force which today, as 9/11 showed and too many other attacks around the world have shown, threatens us all. So friends, when I was Prime Minister, I looked at the world and I concluded very simply, we have a pretty clear choice. Either we stand up for our values and interests right on the front line with Israel, or the retreat of our values and our interests will accelerate across the world, and the greatest threats will come daily to our own shores. And that is why all free peoples, including Canadians, Americans, and others, must support the state of Israel unequivocally. You know, I like to remind people, what is the difference in the threats faced by Israel and those faced by Canada and the United States? It's really one thing, and only one thing. The threats are much closer to Israel than they are to us. One of those threats, closer to Israel but common to all of us, that I've been asked to talk about, is the threat posed by the Islamic fundamentalist dictatorship in Iran, and particularly by the Iranian nuclear program. Some of you are probably aware that I belong to the Friends of Israel Initiative. Is an international group of former high office holders that is dedicated to defending and promoting Israel on the world stage. And that, it's led by former Prime Minister Aznar of Spain. In this capacity, former Prime Minister Aznar and myself recently published a piece in the Wall Street Journal, in which we argued that all Western nations need, for our own sakes, to stand beside Israel against the Iranian regime. Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has made no secret of his hatred of Israel, of America, and of the West in general. Friends, in our views, Messianic mullahs possessing nuclear weapons is simply too dangerous a prospect for the world to tolerate. And the nuclear deal that was negotiated by the previous administration of this country will not prevent that. In fact, as Prime Minister Aznar and I argue, that deal is in essence the passive acceptance of a roadmap for Iran to obtain nuclear weapons capacity in less than a decade. The Iran nuclear deal must be strengthened to ensure unlimited monitoring of Iran's nuclear activities, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons delivery systems, and to take out the 10-year sunset clause and make that agreement permanent. And friends, if these things cannot be done, as President Trump has said, the Iranian nuclear deal should be scrapped and full and comprehensive sanctions against Iran should be restored. My friends, I think Israel may be the most remarkable country that has ever been created. And let me tell you, whatever the media may say, there are millions of people in my country, most not of Jewish faith or background, just as there are hundreds of millions of more like them around the world, who join us in our admiration of what Israel has accomplished in its 7 short decades. Let us never forget that.